The Drakari invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly where the humans said they would. Lyra watched from the command center as 200 massive bioships appeared on her sensors like a swarm of deadly insects. Each ship was huge, covered with living armor that pulsed with dark energy. They looked like giant predators floating through space, ready to devour everything in their path. The largest ship was 3 times bigger than any human vessel. Its hull was covered with weapon creatures that looked like eyes and mouths. This had to be the command ship of War Prince Thaxon, the Drakari leader who had destroyed dozens of worlds. Lyra's skin was bright orange with red streaks, showing her fear and tension. Around her, Zephyrian officers monitored their sensors and tried to stay calm. They had spent the last day learning human battle tactics, but they still felt like children pretending to be soldiers. "All ships, this is Admiral Cross," came the voice over the communication system. "Remember the plan. Stay hidden until the signal, then hit them fast and hard. No mercy. No hesitation." The human fleet was scattered throughout the star system, hiding behind asteroids and moons just like they had planned. Their ships were much smaller than the Drakari vessels, but they moved with the coordination of a wolf pack. Each captain knew exactly what to do and when to do it. The Drakari fleet moved slowly toward the planet, arranged in a large formation that looked unstoppable. War Prince Thaxon's command ship led the way, followed by rows of destroyer-class bioships and smaller fighters that swarmed around them like angry insects. "Attention, primitive creatures," came a voice that made Lyra's skin turn cold gray. It was deep and rough, with the sound of someone who enjoyed causing pain. "I am War Prince Thaxon of the Drakari Empire. Your world belongs to us now." The transmission showed Thaxon's face on the main screen. He looked like a giant lizard with red eyes and teeth like knives. Scars covered his face and neck, proving he had survived many battles. When he smiled, it was the smile of something that enjoyed eating its prey while it was still alive. "Surrender now and some of you may live as our slaves," Thaxon continued. "Resist and we will eat your children in front of you before we kill you slowly." For a moment, the communication channel was quiet. Then Admiral Cross responded, her voice calm and steady. "War Prince Thaxon, this is Admiral Helen Cross of the United Earth Systems. You have 30 seconds to turn around and leave this system. This is your only warning." Thaxon's face showed surprise, then anger, then cruel amusement. "Humans? I have never heard of humans. Are you another race of cowards who think words can stop the Drakari?" "Words, no," Cross replied. "But nuclear fire works pretty well." Thaxon laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Nuclear fire? How primitive. Our bioships heal from nuclear damage. Your weapons cannot hurt us." "We'll see about that," Cross said. Thaxon's expression changed to rage. "Kill them all! Show these unknown fools what happens when they threaten the Drakari." The Drakari fleet surged forward, their bioships moving faster than something so large should be able to move. Weapon creatures on their hulls began charging with sickly green light. The space around them filled with smaller fighter craft that screamed through the vacuum like living missiles. That was when the humans struck. The first attack came from the asteroid field. What the Drakari thought were normal space rocks suddenly exploded outward, revealing human ships that had been hiding inside hollowed-out asteroids. Their first volley was a coordinated barrage of nuclear-tipped missiles that hit 6 Drakari destroyers before they could react. The bioships writhed in pain as nuclear fire burned through their living armor. Green blood leaked into space as the creatures that served as their hulls died screaming. 3 of the ships were killed instantly. The other 3 began trying to heal, but the damage was too severe. "What was that?" Thaxon roared over the communication channel. His answer came from behind the gas giant's largest moon. Captain Morrison's ship, the UES Defiance, led a squadron of human cruisers in a high-speed attack run straight through the middle of the Drakari formation. Their ships were small enough to slip between the massive bioships, and their weapons were aimed at specific weak points that human scientists had identified. Morrison's voice came over the radio, calm and professional. "Target the neural clusters behind the primary weapon ports. That's where their brains are most vulnerable." The human ships moved like dancers, weaving between Drakari vessels and launching precisely aimed attacks. They used kinetic kill vehicles, massive chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, that punched through bioarmor like bullets through flesh. When the Drakari tried to turn their big ships to follow the humans, they were too slow and clumsy. But the Drakari were not helpless. Their fighter craft swarmed after the human ships like angry wasps. Some human vessels were caught and torn apart by living weapons that bit through their hulls. Captain Lisa Chen's ship, the UES Retribution, took a direct hit from a bio-torpedo and exploded in a ball of fire. "Chen is down," Morrison reported, his voice tight with anger. "Make them pay for that." The battle turned into chaos as more human ships revealed themselves from hiding places throughout the system. They attacked from above and below, from behind asteroids and planetary rings, using every trick they had learned in 5 years of hunting Drakari. Some ships were loaded with nuclear mines that they dropped like deadly seeds in the path of bioships. Others used their engines as weapons, ramming into weak points at incredible speeds. Admiral Cross's flagship, the UES Earth's Fury, led the main assault against Thaxon's command ship. Her heavy cruiser was built like a flying fortress, covered with armor and bristling with weapons. She took her ship straight at the War Prince, trading shot for shot with weapons that could crack planets. "You think your little metal ships can defeat the mighty Drakari?" Thaxon screamed as his command ship's weapons tore chunks out of the Earth's Fury. "I think you talk too much," Cross replied, launching a spread of nuclear torpedoes at point-blank range. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. Thaxon's command ship staggered backward, its living hull burning and bleeding. But it was still alive, still fighting. The creature that served as its main body began healing the damage even as the battle continued. Morrison's Defiance swooped in from the side, firing its main gun directly into the wound that Cross had created. The bioship screamed, actually screamed, as the kinetic projectile punched deep into its body. Green blood and strange organs spilled out into space. "Hull breach in the command ship," Morrison reported. "Target is wounded but still functional." The Drakari were learning to adapt to human tactics. They began using their fighter craft more effectively, sending them out in coordinated swarms to overwhelm individual human ships. Commander Ryan Burke's vessel, the UES Vengeance, was surrounded by dozens of biofighters and torn apart piece by piece despite his crew's brave fighting. "We're losing ships faster than we can replace them," Cross said over the command channel. "All units prepare for final assault. This is it." Lyra watched the battle from her command center, amazed and horrified by what she was seeing. The humans fought with a ferocity she had never imagined possible. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no thought for their own safety. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their friends died, they fought harder. Captain Morrison's voice came over the radio one last time. "Admiral, the Defiance is critically damaged. Engines are gone, life support is failing. But I've got one more trick to play." "Jake, no," Cross said, understanding what he meant. "Tell Earth we did our job," Morrison replied. "Defiance out." The UES Defiance, its hull cracked and burning, suddenly accelerated toward Thaxon's command ship. Morrison had diverted all power to the engines, turning his vessel into a guided missile. The bioship tried to move out of the way, but it was too big and too slow. The collision lit up the entire star system. Morrison's ship, loaded with nuclear explosives, punched deep into the Drakari command vessel before detonating. The explosion tore Thaxon's ship in half, killing the War Prince instantly and sending shockwaves through the entire fleet. "Command ship is destroyed," Cross reported, her voice filled with grief and pride. "Jake got him." With their leader dead, the Drakari fleet began to fall apart. Some ships tried to retreat while others fought on in rage and confusion. The remaining human vessels pressed their attack, hunting down the bioships one by one with ruthless efficiency. By the time the suns rose over Kepler 442b, the battle was over. The human ships arrived exactly when Captain Morrison said they would. Lyra watched from the command center as they came out of hyperspace near the edge of the star system. She had expected to see beautiful, sleek vessels like the ones her people built. Instead, she saw something that made her skin flash orange with surprise. The human ships looked like metal predators. They were dark gray and covered with thick armor plates. Weapons stuck out from every surface like the spines of some dangerous animal. The hulls were scarred and dented from many battles. These ships had been built for one purpose only: to fight and kill. The lead ship was bigger than the others and had UES Defiance painted on its side in white letters. It moved slowly toward the Zephyrian space station, followed by a smaller escort vessel. As it got closer, Lyra could see burn marks and patched holes in its armor. This ship had been through hell and kept fighting. "This is Captain Morrison requesting permission to dock," came the familiar voice over the radio. Permission granted, Lyra replied. Welcome to our system, Captain. An hour later, Lyra stood in the docking bay waiting to meet the humans for the first time. She had no idea what to expect. Her skin showed nervous yellow stripes mixed with curious purple. Around her, other Zephyrian officers waited with equally mixed feelings. The airlock opened with a hiss of air. The first human to step through was not very tall, especially compared to the elegant Zephyrians. He had dark hair that was cut very short and intense brown eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His clothes were practical and strong, not beautiful like Zephyrian garments. This had to be Captain Morrison. Behind him came a woman who was even more impressive. She was older, with gray streaks in her brown hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of many hard decisions. She walked like someone who was used to being in charge. Her uniform had more decorations than Morrison's, and everyone around her clearly respected her greatly. Commander Voss, "I'm Jake Morrison," the captain said, extending his hand in what Lyra learned was a human greeting. "This is Admiral Helen Cross, Fleet Commander." Lyra shook their hands carefully. Human skin felt different from Zephyrian skin. Rougher, warmer, more solid somehow. "Welcome to our world. We are grateful you have come to help us." Admiral Cross looked around at the assembled Zephyrians with sharp, calculating eyes. "We need to talk strategy immediately. The Drakari will be here in less than 2 days and we have a lot of work to do." They moved to the main conference room where Lyra had gathered all her senior officers. The humans sat across from them at the large table, and for a moment both sides just studied each other. The differences were striking. The Zephyrians were tall and graceful, with skin that shifted colors to show their emotions. The humans were shorter but looked much stronger, with steady eyes and faces that revealed nothing. "Let's start with basics," Admiral Cross said. "You people don't fight wars. You solve problems by talking and being nice to each other. That's admirable, but it won't work with the Drakari." Captain Zara Kane, who was sitting next to Lyra, asked the question everyone was thinking. "Why should we trust you? We have never heard of humans before. How do we know you are not as dangerous as the Drakari?" Morrison and Cross exchanged a look. Then Morrison stood up and activated a holographic projector. Images filled the air above the table. Pictures of planets and cities that had been destroyed. "This was New Colorado," Morrison said, pointing to a world that was now nothing but ash and broken rock. "Population 2 million. The Drakari hit it 5 years ago while we were still learning how to build real spaceships. They killed everyone except a few thousand people who managed to escape." The next image showed a beautiful blue-green planet with white clouds and green continents. "This is what New Colorado looked like before," Morrison continued. "Farms, cities, schools, hospitals. Families living their lives and trying to be happy." Lyra felt her skin turn pale as she looked at the before and after pictures. The destruction was total and horrifying. "The survivors told us about Drakari tactics," Admiral Cross said. "They don't just kill you quickly. They like to play with their food first. They enslave the strong ones and eat the weak ones while they're still alive." More images appeared showing other worlds the Drakari had destroyed. Burning cities, empty settlements, mass graves. The humans watched these images with faces like stone. But Lyra could see pain in their eyes. "We spent 5 years learning everything we could about the Drakari," Cross continued. "How they think, how they fight, how their bioships work. We captured some of their technology and figured out how to kill them efficiently." "But why come here?" Zara asked. "Why risk your lives for people you don't know?" Morrison sat back down and was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but full of conviction. "Because someone has to. Because if good people don't stand up to evil, then evil wins everywhere." "Your galactic community failed you," Cross added, her voice getting harder. "The Centauri Federation, the Altarian Republic, the Procyon Alliance, they all know about the Drakari. They know what happens when these monsters show up, but they're too scared to fight, so they let it happen over and over again." She stood up and began walking around the table. "Every time someone refuses to fight the Drakari, more innocent people die. Every time someone chooses safety over doing what's right, the galaxy gets a little darker." Lyra felt something stirring inside her that she had never felt before. It was like anger, but also like hope. Her skin began to show streaks of red mixed with bright green. "What about your own people?" she asked. "Don't they worry about you getting killed in someone else's war?" Morrison smiled for the first time since arriving. "Earth understands that some things are more important than being safe. We learned that lesson the hard way. Many times throughout our history. If you don't fight bullies, they just keep getting stronger. Admiral Cross activated another hologram, this one showing the approaching Drakari fleet. 200 bioships, all big and nasty. We've got 50 ships, most of them smaller than yours. On paper, we're outgunned and outnumbered. Then how can we possibly win? Zara asked. Because we're not going to fight fair, Cross said with a grim smile. The Drakari are used to bullying peaceful races who don't know how to fight back. They've never faced an enemy that studied them, learned their weaknesses, and came prepared to exploit those weaknesses. Over the next several hours, the humans explained their battle plan. It was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever heard. Instead of lining up ships and shooting at each other like in the old stories, the humans planned to use stealth, deception, and coordinated attacks. They would hide behind asteroids and moons, then strike at weak points in the Drakari formation. Bioships heal fast, but they can't regenerate from everything, Morrison explained. Hit them with enough nuclear fire in the right places and they die just like anything else. Nuclear weapons? Lyra asked, shocked. But those are banned by Galactic Treaty. Treaties don't mean much when you're facing extinction, Cross replied. Besides, humans never signed those treaties. We weren't invited to the meetings. As they talked, Lyra began to understand that these humans were completely different from any race she had ever encountered. They didn't think about politics or trade advantages. They didn't calculate the costs and benefits of every decision. They simply saw wrong and decided to fight it no matter what it cost them. There's something else you should know, Morrison said as the meeting was ending. Some of us probably won't survive this battle. Maybe most of us. But that's okay, because dying for a good cause is better than living as a coward. Lyra looked at the human faces around the table. These people had traveled across the galaxy to risk their lives for strangers. They were prepared to die to protect people they had never met before today. We will fight beside you, she said, her skin showing bright green with gold highlights. Our ships may not be strong, but our hearts are brave. Admiral Cross nodded approvingly. Good, now let's get to work. We have one day to turn your people into warriors. 3 weeks before the Drakari were supposed to arrive, Lyra was working late in the communication center. Most of her people had given up hope. The streets of their cities were half empty as families kept leaving in whatever ships they could find. Those who stayed behind had skin that stayed gray or black, showing they felt hopeless and sad. Lyra was listening to the same old radio signals from across the galaxy when something new came through. It was on a frequency that almost no one used, and the signal was weak and full of static. At first she thought it was just space noise, but then she heard something that made her sit up straight. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiance, the voice said. The words were in the common galactic language, but the accent was strange. We received your distress call. Hold tight, help is coming. Lyra stared at the radio for a long moment. She had never heard of UES or any ship called Defiance. She had never heard of anyone named Jake Morrison either. Her computer had records of every known space-traveling race in the galaxy. But when she searched for UES, nothing came up. This is Commander Lyra Voss of the Zephyrian Defense Corps, she said into the radio. Who are you? What is UES? The answer came back after a few minutes. UES stands for United Earth Systems. We're humans. We got your message about the Drakari fleet heading your way. Lyra looked up humans in her computer but found nothing. She tried Earth and got the same result. This was very strange. How could an entire race exist without any records? I have never heard of humans, she said. Where do you come from? Small yellow star system on the outer rim, Jake Morrison replied. Grid reference 247 Alpha 9. Most folks don't know about us because we're pretty new to space travel. Only been out here about 50 years. Lyra checked the star charts. Grid reference 247 Alpha 9 was in a part of space that most races ignored. It was far from the main trade routes and had no valuable resources. Most scientists thought that area was too dangerous for life because of radiation from nearby pulsars. How did you get our message if you are so far away? She asked. We have listening posts scattered around the galaxy, Morrison said. We like to know what's going on, especially when it comes to the Drakari. Those scaly bastards hit one of our colonies 5 years ago. We've been hunting them ever since. Lyra's skin turned bright yellow with purple streaks. This meant she was very surprised and confused. How could this unknown race have fought the mighty Drakari? The Drakari were supposed to be unbeatable. You have fought the Drakari before? She asked. Fought them, killed them, and learned from them, Morrison said. His voice sounded calm and confident. "They made a big mistake when they messed with humans. We don't forgive, and we definitely don't forget." Over the next few days, Lyra had many conversations with Captain Morrison. He asked her detailed questions about the Drakari fleet that was coming. He wanted to know how many ships there were, what types of weapons they had, and how they usually attacked planets. His questions were very smart and showed that he knew a lot about warfare. "The Drakari use bioships," Morrison explained during one talk. "Living ships that can heal themselves and grow new weapons. They're tough, but they have weaknesses. Every living thing has weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" Lyra asked. "Can't tell you over open radio," Morrison said. "The Drakari might be listening. But trust me, we know how to hurt them." Lyra wanted to believe this human, but it seemed impossible. If humans were really strong enough to fight the Drakari, why had no one ever heard of them? Why weren't they famous across the galaxy? "Captain Morrison," she said. "How do I know you are real? How do I know this is not some cruel joke?" "Because jokes don't come with fleet coordinates," Morrison replied. "Check your long-range sensors in about 6 hours. You'll see us coming." Lyra did check her sensors 6 hours later. Far out in space, she detected new ships approaching her system. These ships looked different from anything she had ever seen. They were smaller than Drakari bioships, but seemed to be made of metal and hard materials. They moved in tight formations like a pack of hunting animals. More human voices started coming through the radio. Captain Lisa Chen of the UES Retribution reported in from the other side of the system. Commander Ryan Burke of the UES Vengeance called from near the asteroid belt. Each human ship had a name that sounded angry or violent, very different from Zephyrian ship names like Peaceful Dawn or Harmony's Gift. "How many ships are coming?" Lyra asked Morrison. 50 combat vessels, he said. "It's not a lot compared to what the Drakari are bringing. But we specialize in making every shot count." 50 ships against 200 Drakari vessels seemed hopeless. But something in Morrison's voice made Lyra feel a little bit of hope for the first time in weeks. Her skin began to show tiny flecks of green, which meant cautious optimism. The other Zephyrians were amazed by the news of the humans. No one could understand why an unknown race would risk their lives to help strangers. It went against everything they knew about how the galaxy worked. Strong races took from weak ones. They did not protect them. "Maybe they want something from us," suggested Captain Zara Kane. "Maybe they plan to take our world after they defeat the Drakari." But when Lyra asked Morrison about this, he laughed. "What would we want with your world? We've got plenty of planets already. Some of them are bigger and richer than yours. Then why are you coming to help us?" There was a long pause before Morrison answered. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because someone has to stand up to bullies like the Drakari. Because if we don't help each other, who will?" This answer confused the Zephyrians even more. They were used to thinking about politics and trade agreements. They understood helping friends who might help you back someday, but helping complete strangers just because it was right? This was something new. As the human ships got closer, Lyra could see them better on her sensors. They looked like they had been in many battles. Their hulls were covered with armor plating and weapons. Some had scars from old fights. These were not exploration ships or trade vessels. These were ships built for war. "Captain Morrison," Lyra said, "your ships look like they have seen much fighting." 5 years of hunting Drakari will do that," Morrison replied. "We've been tracking this particular fleet for 8 months. They destroyed a peaceful farming world in the Vega system before heading your way. Killed about 3 million people. You followed them here?" "Damn right we did. The Drakari think they can run around the galaxy doing whatever they want. Time to teach them different." Lyra felt her skin changing to bright green with gold highlights. This meant she was feeling real hope and excitement. Maybe, just maybe, her people had a chance to survive. "When will you arrive at our world?" she asked. 2 days before the Drakari get there," Morrison said. "That gives us time to coordinate and plan. Hope you're ready for a fight, Commander Voss." "We will be ready," Lyra said, though she was not sure what she meant by that. For the first time in months, she believed they might actually win. The silence after the battle was almost as terrible as the fighting had been. Lyra stood at her command center window and looked out at space filled with debris and wreckage. Pieces of destroyed ships drifted slowly past, some still glowing from the heat of weapons fire. The beautiful emptiness of space had become a graveyard. Her skin showed deep blue mixed with silver, colors that meant sadness and respect for the dead. Around her, Zephyrian officers worked quietly to count the losses and help any survivors they could find. The numbers were hard to believe. Of the 50 human ships that had come to defend their world, only 12 were still capable of flight. Many of those were badly damaged and barely holding together. 38 human vessels had been destroyed completely, taking their crews with them into the darkness. Thousands of brave men and women had died to save people they had never met before. The Drakari losses were even greater. Over 160 bioships had been destroyed or damaged so badly they could not continue fighting. The survivors had fled in panic after War Prince Thaxon died, running back toward their own territory with their tails between their legs. It would be many years before the Drakari tried to attack anyone again. Commander Voss, came a tired voice over the communication system. It was Admiral Cross calling from her flagship. Permission to dock for medical assistance and repairs. Permission granted, Admiral, Lyra replied. Our doctors and engineers are ready to help however they can. When the UES Earth's Fury limped into the docking bay, Lyra could see how much damage it had taken. The hull was cracked and blackened from weapons fire. Whole sections had been blown away, exposing the inner structure like broken bones. It was amazing that the ship could still fly at all. Admiral Cross came through the airlock looking much older than she had just 2 days before. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood, some of it her own. Her left arm was in a sling and there were bandages wrapped around her head, but her eyes were still sharp and determined. Admiral, thank you, Lyra said, not knowing what other words could possibly be enough. You saved our world and our people, Cross nodded slowly. At a hell of a price. I lost a lot of good people today. Jake Morrison was one of the best captains I ever served with. Lyra's skin showed deep purple streaks, which meant she felt guilty and ashamed. So many humans died for us. How can we ever repay such a sacrifice? You don't repay it, Cross said firmly. You honor it. You make sure their deaths meant something. Over the next few days, the Zephyrians worked around the clock to help repair the damaged human ships and treat the wounded crews. Lyra spent most of her time talking with the human survivors, trying to understand these strange, brave people who had risked everything for strangers. She learned that Earth was not a rich or powerful world. Humans had only been traveling between stars for about 50 years, much less time than most other races. They had no great empire or vast fleets. What they had was something rarer and more valuable, the willingness to fight for what was right, no matter what it cost them. Captain Danny Walsh of the UES Stormrider was recovering from burns he had received when his engine room exploded. Even lying in a hospital bed, he talked about the battle with pride rather than regret. We knew this was dangerous when we signed up, he told Lyra. Everyone who joined the fleet after New Colorado understood we might not come home, but we also knew that if we didn't stop the Drakari here, they would just keep killing innocent people somewhere else. But your families, Lyra said, don't they want you to come home safe? Walsh smiled despite his injuries. My wife knew what kind of man she married. She told me before I left that she would rather be a widow with honor than married to a coward. That's how humans think about these things. Lieutenant Sarah Foster, one of the few survivors from Captain Morrison's ship, was even more direct. The captain always said that some things are worth dying for. Freedom is one of them. Peace is another. If good people don't fight for those things, then evil wins by default. As the days passed, Lyra began to change how she thought about many things. The Zephyrians had always believed that talking and being reasonable could solve any problem. They thought violence was always wrong and that smart people could find peaceful solutions to everything. But the humans had shown her that sometimes evil could only be stopped by force. What will you do now? She asked Admiral Cross as the human ships prepared to leave. Go home and rebuild, Cross replied. We lost a lot of ships and people today. It will take time to train new crews and build new vessels, but we'll keep patrolling the galaxy, looking for places where bullies are hurting innocent people. And if you find such places, Cross's expression was grim but determined. We'll do what needs to be done. That's what humans do. Before the human fleet departed, they left behind some of their technology and a few volunteers to help train Zephyrian defenders. The gifts included better weapons, stronger shields, and most importantly, tactical knowledge about how to fight effectively against superior numbers. Your people are peaceful by nature, Cross explained to Lyra. That's a beautiful thing, and you should never lose it completely, but you also need to be able to protect that peace when evil comes calling. The humans also left behind detailed information about other threats in the galaxy. They had been tracking several Drakari splinter fleets, monitoring pirate activities in distant sectors, and gathering intelligence about other aggressive races that preyed on peaceful worlds. Use this information wisely, Cross said. And remember that being strong enough to fight doesn't mean you should go looking for fights. Strength should be used to protect, not to conquer. 5 years later, Lyra stood in the same command center where she had first learned about the Drakari threat. But everything was different now. Her world had built a small but efficient military force, trained by human advisors and equipped with hybrid Zephyrian human technology. More importantly, her people had learned that sometimes good must fight evil, even when the cost is terrible. The memorial to the human crews who died defending Kepler 442b stood in the center of the capital city. It was a simple black wall with the names of every human who had given their life for the Zephyrian people. Families visited it every day to remember the strangers who had saved them. Today, Lyra was dealing with a new crisis. The Procyon Alliance, the same people who had refused to help the Zephyrians, were now facing their own Drakari attack. Their desperate pleas for aid were coming in over the same communication channels that had once carried Zephyrian calls for help. "What should we tell them, Admiral?" asked Captain Zara Kane. Lyra had been promoted after the battle, and Kane now served as her second-in-command. Lyra looked at the star charts showing the Procyon system. She remembered how abandoned she had felt when these same people had turned their backs on her world in its darkest hour. It would be easy to ignore their calls for help, to let them face the Drakari alone just as they had been willing to let the Zephyrians die. But that was not what Jake Morrison and Helen Cross had taught her. That was not what all those brave humans had died for. "Prepare the fleet for departure," she said. "Send word to our human allies. The Procyons need help and we're going to give it to them, even after they refuse to help us." Lyra's skin showed bright green with gold highlights, colors that meant hope and determination. "Especially because they refuse to help us. We're going to show them what it means to do the right thing even when it's hard." She activated the communication system and sent a message toward the Procyon system. Her words were almost exactly the same ones that Captain Morrison had used years before, when humanity had first answered the Zephyrian cry for help. "This is Admiral Lyra Voss of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. Hold tight, help is coming. Because sometimes the best way to honor those who died for you is to live the way they lived. Ready to fight for others, no matter what it costs. Because someone has to stand up to evil, and if good people don't do it, who will?" The human ships that joined the Zephyrian fleet were newer models, built to replace the ones lost in the Great Battle, but they carried the same names and the same spirit as the vessels that had saved Kepler 442b. The UES Defiance II, the UES Earth's Fury II, the UES Retribution II, each one a reminder that heroism never really dies. As the combined fleet jumped to hyperspace, Lyra thought about Captain Morrison and all the others who had sacrificed everything for strangers. Their bodies were gone, but their courage lived on in every ship that answered a call for help, in every person who chose to fight rather than hide, in every act of selfless bravery that made the galaxy a little bit brighter. The darkness was still out there, waiting to swallow up the innocent and the weak, but it would find that the light had grown stronger, that more people were willing to stand up and fight back. And at the head of that growing alliance of the brave and the free, human ships continued to patrol the stars, carrying a simple message to anyone who would listen. Evil may be strong, but good people fighting together are stronger. Commander Lyra Voss stood at the tall window of the defense center and looked out at her beautiful world. The twin suns cast golden light across the crystal cities of Kepler 442b, making the buildings shine like jewels. Purple trees swayed in the gentle wind, their leaves making soft music that her people loved to hear. Children played in the floating gardens while their parents worked on art and poetry. This was paradise, and it had been peaceful for over 3,000 years. Lyra's skin glowed soft blue, showing she felt calm and happy. All Zephyrians could change their skin color to match their feelings. Right now she felt good about her world and her people. They had no wars, no hunger, no hate. Everyone worked together to make life better for all. The door opened behind her. Captain Zara Kane walked in, but her skin was flashing red and orange. This meant she was scared and worried. Lyra turned around and saw fear in her friend's large silver eyes. "Commander, we have a problem," Zara said. Her voice shook a little. A big problem. Lyra followed Zara to the main control room. The large screen showed a map of their star system and the space around it. Red dots moved slowly toward their world from far away. There were many red dots. Too many, what am I looking at? Lyra asked, though she was starting to understand. Long-range sensors picked this up an hour ago, Zara explained. It's a fleet of ships. Very big ships. They are coming straight for us. Lyra's skin began to turn pale yellow, which meant she was getting worried. She looked at the numbers on the screen. The ships were still far away, but they were moving fast. How long until they get here? 6 months, maybe 7 if they stop to rest, Zara said. But Commander, these are not friendly ships. The computer says they match Drakari war vessels. Now Lyra's skin turned bright yellow with streaks of orange. The Drakari were the most feared race in the galaxy. They were big lizard-like creatures who loved to fight and destroy. They traveled from world to world, taking everything and killing anyone who said no. Every peaceful race knew about them and was afraid. Are you sure? Lyra asked. Zara nodded. The ships are alive. They grow and change like living things. Only the Drakari make ships like that. Lyra sat down in her chair and tried to think. Her people had no real army. They had some small ships that they used to explore space and study stars. But these were not warships. The Zephyrians had never needed to fight anyone. They solved problems by talking and sharing ideas. How many ships do we have that could fight? She asked. 12 explorer ships and 6 cargo ships, Zara said. We could put some mining lasers on them, but they would not last long against real warships. Lyra's skin was now bright orange with red spots. This meant she was very scared but trying to stay brave. Send messages to all our people on other worlds. Tell them to come home or find safe places to hide. Then send out calls for help to every race we know. For the next 3 days, Lyra and her team worked without sleeping. They sent messages across the galaxy asking for help. They called the Centauri Federation, who had strong ships in many worlds. They called the Altarian Republic, who were known for being good and fair. They called the Procyon Alliance, who lived close by and had been friendly for many years. The answers came back slowly, and each one made Lyra's heart sink. The Centauri Federation said they could not help because it might start a war they did not want. The Altarian Republic said they were too far away and could not get ships to Kepler 442b in time. The Procyon Alliance, their closest friends, sent the worst message of all. We are sorry, the message said. The Drakari are too strong and too cruel. If we fight them, they will come for our worlds next. We cannot risk our people for yours. We hope you understand. Lyra read the message 3 times before she believed it. Her skin turned gray, which meant she felt hopeless and alone. Even their best friends would not help them. Commander, Zara said softly. What do we do now? Lyra looked around the control room. Her people were all staring at her, waiting for an answer. Their skin colors showed fear, sadness, and confusion. They trusted her to protect them, but she had no idea how. We keep sending messages, she said. Someone out there might help us. And we prepare our ships for battle, even if we cannot win. The next 2 weeks went by like a bad dream. Every day the Drakari ships got closer. Every day more messages came back saying no one would help. The Zephyrians began to panic. Families tried to leave in small ships, but most could not travel between stars. Those who could leave took their children and flew away to distant worlds, hoping to find safety. Lyra worked day and night to organize the defense of her world. She had engineers put weapons on their peaceful ships. She had teachers train people to be soldiers. Even though none of them wanted to fight, she had scientists try to build better shields and stronger weapons, but there was not enough time. At night, she would stand at her window and look up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Drakari were coming to destroy everything she loved. Her people would die. Their beautiful cities would burn, and their peaceful way of life would end forever. The worst part was that she knew other races were watching. They all knew what was happening, but they were too scared to help. They would let the Drakari kill millions of innocent people just to keep themselves safe. Maybe this is how the galaxy works, she thought to herself. Maybe only the strong survive and the peaceful must die. But deep in her heart, she hoped she was wrong. She hoped that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, someone good and brave would hear their call for help. Someone who cared more about doing what was right than about staying safe. She kept sending messages into the night even though no one answered anymore.